Welcome to Learn the Technology with Brandon Krakowsky, the podcast that connects real-world technology with practical learning. I'm your host, Brandon Krakowsky, and in each episode, I'll interview someone working in industry or education to learn about the technologies they use in their work. But here's the twist. I'm learning these tools right alongside you. In each interview, I'll dive into how they got into their role, what their journey was like, and what a typical day looks like for them. I'll also ask for their advice for anyone looking to break into their field. Afterward, I'll follow up with a deeper dive into the technology itself, including hands-on demonstrations to show how it works and how you can use it. Whether you're a student, tech enthusiast, or simply curious about the tools shaping today's workplace, this is the perfect place to start. In every episode, you'll find real conversations with experts at top companies and schools, practical lessons on tools and technologies you can apply to your learning or career, and a closer look at the tools being used in today's industries. Think of this podcast as your guide to discovering and exploring the technologies shaping the modern workplace, and I'll be your learning partner along the way. In this first episode, I interview Mike Hawley, VP of Experience Strategy and Research at ZeroDegrees, a UX research strategy and design studio. Then I'll follow up with demos of some of the tools discussed during the episode. So let's dive in. This is Learn the Technology with Brandon Krakowsky.
What up, Brandon?
What's up, Mike?
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing all right, doing okay. It's been a while.
Been a while. Just playing a little bass.
All right, man. All right.
Like to warm up for meetings.
I was playing a little last night with my little garage band friends.
You got a garage band?
What? Yeah, a little kind of hack around.
Yeah.
Post-pandemic was like, oh, well, it's safe to be in a garage, right? That's open air.
Yeah.
So we started playing, and it's been super fun. I hadn't really done tons of that through my life, and to now be in where I am and connecting with people and playing is super fun.
Where are you? Are you in New Hampshire?
So I moved up from the Boston area, and I had a friend who lived outside of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and it's just beautiful up here. So we moved up here, and I've been able to make it work. We can get into my little career arc a little bit, and when we get to these questions, but it's been great. So I can get to Boston pretty easily, but I also can get to the mountains and the ocean and all that. It's a pretty nice spot.
Wow, that's so nice. Yeah. We're at the opposite end of the spectrum, deep in the city, and which we love, but we do. We go to Rhode Island quite a bit. I don't know if you remember my family's and her family's from Rhode Island as well. So we get over there. We get up there quite a bit, summers and winter break and stuff. It's nice to get out. My mother-in-law lives on a farm actually out in Scituate, Rhode Island. So it's nice to get out of here and spend some time in the woods. So welcome, Michael Hawley. I'll call you Mike, VP of Experience Strategy and Research at ZeroDegrees. ZeroDegrees is a UX research strategy and design studio that helps organizations put human insights at the heart of their digital experiences. Mike, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to be here, Brandon. Good to see you.
Can you tell us what is UX research strategy and design?
Sure. So there's a lot of digital products out there in the world today, right? And there's a lot of engineers building these. It's easy to build something. It's difficult to build something that is compelling, intuitive, easy to use, valuable. And so the practice of user experience more broadly is all about understanding human behavior and applying that to the design of the products and being very intentional as such to make things, like I said, intuitive, usable, and friendly. So there's a number of different parts to user experience, or UX as we say, including some of the things that are in my title there. Research, like how do you talk to people and how do you understand their needs? How do you assess whether a given product or service or tool is useful and intuitive and people can follow it? From there, with the research, I also have strategy as part of my title, and that is how do we marry up what's going to be intuitive and helpful for the end user, the people, with our business strategy for a given company, and find that intersection. The other parts of UX more broadly, I think, would be actual UI design. What does it look like? What are the colors? What are the layouts? How do things respond to various screen sizes? And when we're talking digital products, there's a number of different other aspects to it. The content, what do the words say? And is it compelling? And is it clear? So all those are part of user experience more broadly, which I've been involved in for the last 20 years or so.
Oh, great. So tell me about ZeroDegrees. What are the types of products and services you provide? And also, who are your main clients? And what kinds of projects do you work on?
Yeah, so ZeroDegrees is a professional services UX agency. So if businesses or organizations need extra help or don't have the UX expertise or want kind of an outside opinion or advice or ideas, that's what they would come to us for. There's plenty of companies that have hired their big user experience design teams, but there's others who are lower on that kind of UX maturity who might need to hire out or outsource some of this work. So that's what we do. So we work with clients, companies, organizations who typically have an idea for something they need to do, but they need help bringing it to life. So the clients might be in any number of industries. We do a lot of work in, let's say, financial services or healthcare or higher education or nonprofit. And they would come to us, say, we have an idea, but we can't get out of our own way. Everybody has a different opinion. The engineers are asking for just tell us what to do. Can you help us, ZeroDegrees, understand specifically what the users need, help us make some decisions, run a creative exercise to kind of bring these ideas to life. And so I'll give you one example that I'm kind of been working on pretty recently that I'm kind of proud of is working with an organization. It's a nonprofit called Wounded Warrior Project. And they are an organization that helps military veterans who have been injured in some way, physically or mentally. And they came to us and they said, we think we need some way for, we send them lots of emails. We send all these warriors bunch of stuff, but there's no kind of digital spot for them to get what they need. And we think we need an app or a site or something. So we worked with them very early on to do some research with veterans, with some of their warriors, understand the types of things that they need, the challenges that they have, that particular audience. We ran a little workshop and some design exercises with their stakeholders to try to envision this. And then we've been working with them to design the specifics of an app, usability test that app, and now they have an app in the marketplace for their members, for their warriors, that really helps them connect and engage with all the services that they have. So that's just one example, a feel-good example too, which is why I like it.
That's great. So this is a question that comes to mind. You mentioned the app, right? They ended up with an app. Where does your job end? So are you providing the information to them then to build an app? Are you providing the app? Is that owned by a different team within your organization? What is the deliverable?
Yeah, so agencies like ours, depending on their size, UX agencies may have developers.
Yeah.
They may have they may have just front end developers like UI developers, HTML, React for things like that. Or they may have full stack developers. Our organization is pretty small and we stay pretty focused on the actual design part of it. And so our handoff is typically some kind of a prototype or design system. We use Figma a lot for that type of work. We are very sensitive to that good products or a combination of good design and good kind of development, or it has to be coded well. And so we have some practices that help us collaborate with developers and make sure that they have the assets they need. We're participating in an agile development process, things like that. So, but we don't, as of right now, we don't have developers on staff. We stay pretty focused on that kind of idea generation and user experience design as a real focus. So,
all right, you're already mentioning things that are interesting. What is Figma?
So Figma is the latest popular design tool for interactive digital designers. And so through the course of my career, it's been a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I've used, let's say, Dreamweaver way in the past, or Fireworks for a little while. A lot of people use Photoshop, but those tools were Actures, another one. There's been a whole ton of tools. The Figma is by far the most popular tool right now. It has really good collaboration features. So, to do some of these things at scale, you need more than one designer. You need a team focusing on these things. You also, the lines between just doing a static screen image like Photoshop, if you were working on a screen design or an app of something and you want it to look nice and figure out the flows, that's great, but those are pretty static. So a lot of these tools now have kind of built-in prototyping so that your designs can actually be felt and interacted with, and you can use them to test, and people get a real sense of what the final product might be like. Because you want to, animations or transitions are important in the experience, and so these tools, Figma especially, has some good things for that. As along with the requisite kind of collaboration features, commenting and tracking versions and things like that. So definitely Figma, if you want to be a UX designer today in 2024, 25, that's Figma. Yep.
That's a quote, and I have this recorded. Fantastic.
Right.
From Mike Hawley. Tell me about your team, the team you manage or work with on these projects.
Yeah. So I'll tell it from the perspective of our agency, but I think it's similar when I work with in-house teams, is that when you're doing these things, you need multiple perspectives. Helpful to have collaboration. It's very rare that we'll say, okay, here's a challenge from a business challenge or a thing we want to design. Hey, one person go off and do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty rare. That said, 10 or 20 people with opinions might be too much, especially in these creative endeavors, right? Where you're trying to figure out how should it feel and look and act. Small teams are usually how this works. Those teams probably consist of a couple of different skill sets that kind of blend together. And so I'll give you an example just from my company today. So my role is probably more on the research side of things. How do you ask questions of the target audience? How do you do that in an unbiased way? How do you understand what's working or not working or assess their needs? I'm also involved in the kind of early phases where we're involving the business. People from marketing or technology have their opinions too, and you need to kind of combine those. So facilitating some type of creative workshop or design thinking exercise is a lot of what I do. And then I will partner with another person who is more on the detailed design, who understands kind of UI patterns really well and is adept at that Figma tool we talked about and can turn out those designs. We might also work with another person who's more content centric. Content is a big part of these experiences. Like, do people understand what the labels are and how to go? So there are content strategy experts. And then I think there's also something to be said about project management or agile kind of scrum master kind of role in this, because maybe we'll talk about later, but some of the challenges with this stuff is everybody uses technology, so everybody has an opinion. Oh, yeah. And how you manage the process and generate consensus is important. And so having that kind of role is also helpful. And so some of the bigger projects, you might have a couple of designers or a couple of researchers, but that's generally how we do that.
So as the VP, what is your role in that whole process of managing this project? You talked about the early stages, talking to a company, you want to be able to ask questions, find out what's working, what's not working, assess needs. What's your bringing together these different roles within your organization? What is your role specifically within the scope of a single project, for example?
So It's part doing the research and part collaborating with the designers, and just in terms of the level of, but kind of the VP part of it, I think comes in a couple of things. From an agency perspective, there is a level of kind of account management that needs to happen.
Oh, okay.
So you need to manage up within the client. You need to understand how they're going to be measured. You want the app at the end, or the design, or the new site or product or whatever it is. But you have to also be looking out to make sure that your client is successful, that they're able to manage upwards, that you're presenting to the CEO or the steering committee properly.
Mm.
So that level of account management comes with the seniority. I think the other thing is there's a number of different ways to do these projects. You can take classes on design thinking and the UX process, but it's not a one size fits all. Each project is slightly different. And so my role includes definitely some consulting on what's the right process for this, and convincing stakeholders that we should do this activity, or this workshop will be helpful and how it should go, or who are we going to recruit for our user research and why. Deciding on all those kind of process types of decisions that are efficient but yet effective, I think, is part of that VP role as well.
I see. Okay, so this is a good time. Let's dive into the kind of strategy and tools you use for the process. So, what are the different, and you said, every project's different. I understand that. What generally, like, what are the methods, approaches, tools that you use in your process for working with a company on a project? For example, conducting design research or collecting data from users through testing, or for the design process itself. What are the kind of general approaches to the project management of this?
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll take that, and maybe there's three components that I'll talk about. One is, let me start with kind of the overall management of the process. Like I said, a lot of people have opinions,
Mhm.
and the value that I think we bring is bringing some structure to that process. So how are we going to make decisions when everybody, I think it should be purple, and I think it should be red, and I think it should be pink, right? How are we going to make those decisions? So we set up a process, a structure, and then we want the various stakeholders to follow along in that structure and in that process. And so I think what's been really helpful the last handful of years is the proliferation of these online collaboration tools
Mm.
for that. And so our tool of choice is Miro.
Oh,
People have used Mural as well, but these kind of online canvases that allow you to track the arc of the project and all the decisions made, the inputs, the notes, um, all those I think that has been really helpful compared to 10 years ago when we try to post deliverables to some kind of extranet site or kind of just list or Dropbox file or something. These online collaborative tools have proved really helpful. Not everybody loves to go in and zoom around and everything, but to have the entire kind of decision making, the messy parts and the kind of more formal parts together, I think is really helpful. And I see those tools starting to add a lot of AI features in there now that can help accelerate that work. So, for example, we'll have, let's say we'll do a collaborative design workshop, and we'll have different stakeholders sketch out, a potential solution to a particular page or a problem. And we'll all upload our little sketches to the Miro board, the collaborative tool board. And then we'll go around the room. What did you think? Let me talk about your design and your ideas. And we'll take notes and all that. And then some of the AI tools can summarize all that stuff for you
mm.
and identify trends and say, it looks like you're gravitating towards this direction.
Yeah.
And kind of accelerates the process, and everything's captured and documented all in one place. So
Is Miro a project management tool that's more geared towards this type of work, or is this just generally used for all kinds of projects? I've heard of it, I've seen it, I've been exposed to it, but from your perspective, is this a good tool for you specifically in this industry or in this field, or could this generally be used for other types of projects?
I think it can be used for a lot of different types of projects, for sure.
Okay.
It is visual in nature, so the people who are more kind of adept at getting in there and drawing shapes and flows and
Yeah.
there's a lot of sticky notes is a big part of Miro, just the
Mhm.
basics, just taking sticky notes. So people who are comfortable with that type of thing can use it, but it can be used for all sorts. It's not just a UX or design tool. It's a team collaboration tool.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're not familiar with that, I definitely recommend it for lots of different types of things.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
let's jump back to your career.
Yeah.
How did you get here? So what's been your journey into UX research and design?
So yeah, sure, I might date myself a little bit. Um, so I started working in technology as, in the 90s as software was kind of emerging, right? And I could tell two quick stories. One is I worked for my entry level job. My first job was helping with a company that did software for hospitals. And my job was to go around to different hospitals and train them on the software, and then there would eventually be a day or a night at midnight we would switch over from the old system, whether that be paper or some other prior software, to this new fancy good software,
Mhm.
right? And so um, I had this distinct memory of being there at midnight on one night, and there was a nurse on one of the nursing stations who started crying because she was afraid she was going to lose her job because she couldn't work the computer, you know? And so I didn't realize it at the time, but that's kind of the intersection of technology and the human part of it. And so I was kind of drawn to that, and that kind of stuck with me. Fast forward a couple years, the dot com boom starts to happen, and I'm like, I want to be part of that.
Mhm.
And so I was working with a company who was doing a product, and my role was to kind of be the interface between the clients and the developer. The developer didn't want to talk to the clients, right? The engineer.
Right.
And so that was my job. And so I was kind of doing UX or needs analysis or product management before I knew what it was called. Um, and I was just looking to kind of build on that. And that's when the term user experience really started to emerge. And I decided to go head on into it and went back and got my master's degree at Bentley University.
Mhm.
They call it human factors and information design, but it's really user experience design. And from there, it's been a great 20 years, with the proliferation of all this software and systems and mobile phones and everything. Design has been really important. It's been a good business to be in. So that's how I got into it.
It's sort of like your path kind of makes sense now looking back from
Right,
that first interaction with the nurse at the hospital who couldn't work a computer.
right.
And you said like you didn't realize it at the time, but that really was the interaction between human and computer.
Yeah, and I love it. It's this great intersection between kind of the creative aspect of it and the artistic thing that I have an
Mhm.
interest in,
Yeah.
technology as well. Like you have to know what's capable, what's possible, but also the human end of it, right? Maybe it's just me. I do like to interact with people and like to understand them and
Yeah.
um, see what's valuable. And I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of usability test sessions where you watch people use technology. And I'm always fascinated by kind of how human nature and how different people, um, their experiences are different. And
Mhm.
I'm better now at predicting what's going to work and what not work, but I still get surprised here and there. It's pretty interesting.
So you mentioned these testing sessions. How do you do this testing? The human testing for, I don't know, different kinds of products. What is this? Is this in a lab? What does this look like?
Sure. Yeah. So usability testing
Yeah.
is the name of the method, right? And it's at its core, it's pretty simple. Um, you have a task that you want somebody to do with the software, like or a product, get from point A to point B,
Hmm.
do this transaction, find this piece of information, and you ask them to do it, and you be quiet, you sit back and you observe, and you ask them to quote unquote think aloud while they
Hmm.
do. And it's amazing what you can learn if you know how to listen and watch people appropriately.
Hmm.
And so if somebody says, Mike, I was going along just fine, and now I don't know where to go, or I totally missed that button, or this doesn't make sense to me, or that was cool. If I could do that, that would save me so much time in my job. Whatever it is, you learn a lot from that. Now, it sounds pretty straightforward, but I took multiple classes on this as a method in my schooling.
Yep.
There's definitely ways to ask follow-up questions that are unbiased, don't lead the person.
Mhm.
There's a variety of ways to get at kind of understanding people's emotion as they go through this, or measure the effectiveness of something, time on task, or other types of things. And so there's a lot to it. In terms of the format or kind of the protocol, pre-pandemic, there was a lot more in person of this. You could do it in labs. And there are labs set up where you'd pay somebody for an hour of their time to come in, and you would record the session. And I think I'd be thoughtful about where I sit, and I didn't want to intimidate them and all this other stuff. And we would have a script written of what the questions that we want to ask and tasks that we want to do, and we watch them in person. And there might be a one-way mirror so other people could be watching, and that was good. That type of stuff still exists. But obviously now people use phones, or we use Zoom a lot, or Teams, or whatever, if you want to get people remotely. And the key, I think, is just doing it at all, getting that user feedback. There are a lot of teams who are like, we don't have time for that, or, we think we know our customers the best. And so there's oftentimes I'll do this more kind of guerrilla style, and I'll just I remember we were doing some research on one of these kiosks, right, that is at a gas station,
Mhm.
right? And some of them play like the news, or they give you like a little coupons or something you can interact with. And
Yeah.
the company wanted us to kind of do a usability test. Did people get it? Do they know how to correct? And there, I think the contextual nature of that is important. And so there's sometimes that we go out in the field to do these kinds of studies because the lighting is important, or if it's kind of a business application, the environment that they're in is important. And so you can do that type of thing in these usability testing sessions as well.
So a couple follow-up questions. How many users will you test for a particular project? Does it depend on the project? Are we talking about hundreds of users, or is that not necessary anymore? And also, what are you giving them to test? So like in the case of the kiosk, you wanted to do testing, you went to the gas station and maybe you had them use the kiosk and you watched them. But what about something that you're developing that's in Figma, for example? What are you using to actually, what are you giving them to actually work with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So two parts to your question there. So this is qualitative research, right? And so you're talking to people one-on-one. It's subjective. It's, you're making kind of, you're asking follow-up questions. So that's one style to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of debate in the industry about how many people you need to do to kind of make sure that you're uncovering the number of usability errors that might be in a given product. But you'd be surprised at how low the number is, and you start to see trends. And so if you're talking to one type of audience, if you talk to 5, 6, 7 people, you get a lot of the usability issues.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Okay.
if you're anticipating that there might be differences in terms of your kind of segments that you're dealing with, so maybe men are different than women in this particular instance, you might have talked to 7 women, 7 men, right? That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is for the one-on-one types, there is, it's small sample sizes. And I'm confident with that. The only thing you have to be sensitive to is sometimes business stakeholders are not as confident with it, and you might need to talk to 15, 20, that type of thing. I should also say that there are, over the last 5 or 10 years, has been the emergence of a lot of online tools that do this.
Mm-hmm.
So usertesting.com is a very popular tool. And what that does is allow you to do the same type of user testing, but at scale. So you're not talking to people one-on-one, but you're setting up the tasks or the things that you want them to do as a script or a survey. And then the software allows them to go through the product. You send basically a link to answer your question. You send a link to a prototype or some kind of work in progress, and they try to do those tasks, and they the online tools are great because they measure how long a time, where somebody goes, where somebody clicks, how long it takes them, and then ask them a little surveys, a couple of questions at the end. So you get bigger sample sizes. You can do 100 people or something like that. And so I'm still a little, maybe I'm old school in the way I like the one-on-one interactions because it allows for that more in-depth follow-up, but there's room for both types of approaches.
Interesting. So for the one-on-one type testing, are you essentially a proctor? Are you watching them do something via screen sharing if it's over Zoom, something like that? Is that the way it works?
Exactly right. So I will send them a link in this chat of
Yeah.
Zoom, for example. Then I will
Yeah.
coach them how to share their screen, and then I watch them as they click around. Having their camera, I think, is also helpful. So I encourage that if they're
Mhm.
comfortable with that, because facial reactions, you learn to kind of look at those as much as what people say or do. There's a lot of different kind of inputs that I'm picking up on having done this type of method a lot.
So when you're using something like usertesting.com, I imagine it provides all kinds of interesting data from these sessions with these users. How are you capturing data from these one-on-one sessions? You have a video of I don't know, an hour-long session. They did some testing. You asked them some questions, maybe follow-up questions. Then you have a video. How are you capturing the necessary data from that interview or from that session at the end of the day?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So for these interviews, for these sessions, I'll typically have a script. I want to make sure I cover this feature of the product or that feature of the product.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to ask these follow-up questions. And so it's semi-structured. I'll allow for some, let me ask you more about that or go deeper into that, but it's generally a script. And so with that script, for each section of my script, I will take notes as we go, or I'll go back to the recording and take notes. And 5 or 10 years ago, I would then go back to my notes and do kind of qualitative analysis of those notes, look for trends. Sometimes I might put together a spreadsheet. How many people said X or how many people said Y about this feature? And I'd kind of add up. It's a little subjective in that it could be only 1 or 2 people said something, but you think that thing's really important. You might highlight that more in your report.
Mhm.
Um, um, Now, what I will do is I will take all the videos, all the recorded sessions, and
Mhm.
I will upload them into an AI tool called Coloop. And I will ask it, what are the trends? And
Mhm.
it will analyze across the different participants who said what. Did a lot of people say this type of thing? And it really accelerates that process for me. So it's not making my decisions, and I wouldn't trust it yet to make my report to my client or to kind of make the final decisions about what we're going to change on the product or the
Mhm.
interface. But it really does accelerate that process. So we've had a good time with Coloop so far.
That's great. Yeah, you're mentioning a lot of interesting technologies and tools. So does Coloop essentially extract information from the video, summarize it, and provide that to you as notes, and then you take it from there?
Yeah, and well, basically, it uploads all of the transcript information into its
Oh,
own kind of
okay.
learning database, such that I can query questions on it as well, just like
Okay.
ChatGPT,
Right.
but on this subset of data, which is my research findings and insights and commentary. So I can ask it, what did people think about this feature?
Right.
And it'll return kind of a nice answer. The other thing that's nice is um, if I'm presenting this stuff to stakeholders, the CEO, I can make a big PowerPoint presentation or some other thing, and they'll get tired of looking at slides. But if I show them videos of their customers saying this sucks
Mhm.
or this new way would be better, there's nothing more powerful than the customer saying that directly. So
Wow.
some of these tools will direct you to here's the point in your
Oh, right.
interview that had that quote. And and I can go and I can clip that quote and I include that 30-second clip in my presentation, and it means 1,000 times more than just me as a consultant kind of saying that stuff.
Was
So
that
helps
an
accelerate things.
That's great. Was that an unexpected result of using a tool like Coloop? Wow, it's actually pointing me to the point in the video where the customer or the user actually said this. Was that unintended?
I don't know about, so I would do a lot of these videos before. It just take a lot longer.
Okay.
So it's not like I had, I can do videos. No, so we knew that. So I think
Yeah.
they built the tool to accommodate what features people would probably like. So yeah.
Is Coloop again specifically for this type of research, or is it kind of a general video analysis tool?
It's for people doing research, not necessarily UX research. You could be doing market research, kind of PR type of things,
Mhm.
or feedback on advertisements. Whatever kind of research you're doing, you can feed that into here. Ours is products, mostly digital projects for us, but and doing it from this kind of usability perspective. But they're set up for all sorts of research that people might do with their businesses.
Can you talk about a project where you or your team solved a particularly complex problem, and what was the solution?
I'll talk more generally about it. Over the years, I've worked with plenty of insurance companies, health insurance companies, right? So through your employer, you have health insurance. Um, they have a couple of pretty gnarly problems. Um, how do they're in the business of selling insurance. I get it. That insurance could have um, benefits for people, especially let's say you need your core, but you might need some supplemental type of insurance. Maybe you need some insurance if you're going to be out of work, or um, you know depending on your family situation, there might be other kind of insurance that's helpful for you.
Mhm.
How do you make that case is really difficult, right? How do you sell that? How do you not oversell it? Do you scare people into getting it? Do you um, provide very rational descriptions of what makes sense? Do you take a financial perspective at it? Like, how do you do that? And so, and how do you put that in an interface that's not kind of intimidating and kind of compelling? And so
Mhm.
you want to try to find that balance of, the business goal is to kind of sell more of these products, but the user goal and the customer goal is to get the right thing for that situation, right? And so that's one example. I think a related example, and I'll talk about how we did this in a second, but another example would be these health insurance companies. They're motivated to keep people healthy, right? There's a business motivation for that, but that's also a benefit for the consumer as well, right? Um, how do you can you set up tools that help motivate or encourage um, healthy behaviors?
Mhm.
And so that's a real challenge, right? And so understanding what the barriers are to kind of those healthy behaviors that would benefit the business and benefit the consumer. And so those are kind of big, hairy problems more generally. Um, and kind of our approach, or my approach in this kind of using user experience principles, is to try to find that intersection of kind of behavioral um, characteristics of people and what motivates them,
Mhm.
uh, what types of things can help encourage sticking with a given behavior or changing behavior over time. And so to do that, you need to understand the psychology of it. And then you need to do that research with those people in that particular segment or kind of area. You marry that up with kind of understanding business needs and doing exercise design thinking exercises with this kind of the stakeholders of it, and you look for the kind of alignment of the techniques that'll work for the user and the needs of the business. So I know that's pretty high level, but
Yeah.
um, um, that human-centered approach is kind of core at everything.
I like the way you summarized it. It's basically the human needs matched with the business needs.
Right. Yeah. There's often times where the business needs don't align
Right.
with kind of what's going to resonate or what the needs are or the values that people have. And those are the products that don't succeed. And
Yeah.
so if you can really understand what is going to be, I know there's a lot of debate about the term MVP,
Mhm.
minimal viable product, a lot of people say.
Right.
Um, but and there's, thousands of variations of that term. The one that I've always liked is minimal valuable product, because that's
Mhm.
what's going to be that's what's going to resonate and have kind of usage and engagement on behalf of the consumer, the customer audience.
Mhm. So, talked a lot about work.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance your work and your other interests in your personal life? Do you have specific strategies to manage work-life balance, or is it fairly organic for you? You work during the day and then you leave work and you're home with the family or you're playing music.
Um, Fairly natural. Well, I should say it's not necessarily so, super intentional in
Mhm.
terms of how I get my balance. But I will say there's a couple things that I'd say. One is working in an agency environment. There is a reputation that agencies will kind of churn and burn, right?
Mhm.
You have client deliverables, they're paying you a lot per hour. You want to win, win, win. You got to do the RFPs. You got to stay up late and, have this amazing presentation. Um, I've been fortunate enough to be kind of doing this long enough or be with organizations who recognize that the best work doesn't come out of that. And so I'm here to say the agency life doesn't have to be like that.
Mhm.
And it can be more 9 to 5-ish if you're intentional about it, if you're honest with yourself about it. That said, I love what I do. I can't turn off my brain when it comes to solving a design challenge.
Yeah.
And my brain will be thinking about it as I fall asleep, as I take a shower.
Mhm.
Um, but in an odd, sick way, I kind of enjoy that because that's the challenge is like,
Yeah.
we take this complex thing and achieve this, like this interface can be smoother, it can be better, it can be more intuitive. I know there's a way, like, do we organize it this way with tabs or whatever? And like my brain keeps spinning on it and I love it. And so I do that. I have to admit, but that's a good part of it. So I try to balance that. Kind of maybe the more intentional part of that is I know I have to unplug, especially, I work from home. I'm on the computer all day. I get Slack messages and team messages and a client email box and my own email box. Got stuff coming
Yeah.
out all the time. So I am intentional about unplugging
Mhm.
in the off hours, hiking the mountains, getting off, going to the soccer game with my kids and stuff like that. So uh, I recognize, and we can all feel it when it gets too much, and you need to just unplug. And it's so difficult. I like left my phone at home the other day by mistake, and I felt so naked.
Yeah.
But it was good. And after a while, I was like, it's fine. I can do this. And
Oh,
so I will hike. A lot of people hike with their headphones on or earbuds,
mhm.
and I won't do that. And no more content when I'm kind of unplugging.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you mean. You talk about like solving problems at night when you're falling asleep. That happens to me as well. And sometimes I think, well, what else would I be thinking about? Like, should I be thinking about something else? This is a fine thing to be thinking about at night. Like, it's if your mind is going to work on something, I mean,
Right.
if it's not work, it's going to be you're going to analyze something else or try to solve some other problem or
Yeah.
create a problem to solve. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I,
natural.
I agree. Yeah. I do a little bit of yoga or, I don't know about meditation. That might be a little too overstating it for me, but you do have to try to calm your brain sometimes, I feel.
I think they call that napping.
Yes. I do like that.
So tell me about any advice you would have for aspiring researchers, designers looking to enter this field, looking to enter UX research and design.
Yeah. So a couple things there. One is, I think you're looking at a pretty amazing profession. Like I said, all the things that I like about the creative aspect, the technology, the human aspect, I love the balance of it. So I do like that. That said, there have been changes in the market. A lot of technology layoffs has now resulted. It's hard to make the business case sometimes for UX. Yeah,
Mm,
it's easier to say, well, we need an engineer to get this thing done. It's a harder thing to say we should invest in usability testing and an expert UI designer because how much money is that going to, raise for us or do for us? There's been some layoffs, and it's a challenging, market. I think that's more broadly in technology.
mm,
Um, so it's difficult right now. However, we will always have the need for human-centered design and understanding what's going to work and what's not. And so stick with it is what I would say.
Yeah.
For those who are new to the industry, you have to focus on your portfolio. You have to focus on work that you've done, the thinking behind your work. UX is more than just the design of it, but it's the how do we translate those user needs? Why do we make the decision that we made? What principle are we using here to make this decision? All that stuff is important to hiring managers and kind of being successful in your job. And so working on that portfolio, I get a lot of students or people entering the field who say, well, how can I have a portfolio if I don't have a job yet?
Right.
And worked on a lot of things. And fake it till you make it. Work for the nonprofit in your area. Redesign the Instagram interface in the way that you think is better and showcase that. All that would be really, it shows your passion and your interest and your skills in this area, even if it's not a paid gig. That's totally fine for me as a hiring manager. So, yeah, in terms of, I do think maybe I'm a little bit biased in this, but I do think training or education is important. There is a debate. There's some people who think that kind of you can have kind of a natural inclination towards an eye for design, if you will. But I think where the education, whether that be some kind of certificate or a full-on degree, is helpful, is it really teaches you how to rationalize and justify designs. You learn all the principles and all the language and all the history behind it that differentiates you from somebody else who just has an opinion. So when you go and you go into the presentation with the CEO about here's the new app and the product that we developed, you can't say, isn't this cool?
Right.
You have to say, here's why this works. Here's what people said. Here's the research protocol that we used to validate this. Here's what we anticipate. All that stuff. And so that's what the education I think is helpful with. So I do encourage that.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question on the education side. Training, technical resources, learning paths that you would recommend. You mentioned certifications and courses. When you say certification, what do you mean? Like online, Coursera certifications? Like what are the best places to start if you don't have a portfolio and you really just want to start learning this on the academic side?
Yeah. I think there's a range. So at the lowest level, you have maybe some online training that you can go to, Coursera or something like that. Nothing wrong against Coursera. I don't mean that in any negative way. It's just, but that's kind of the level of that. The next step is kind of order of magnitude of a several month program that results in some kind of certificate. General Assembly, for example, is one example. And then the third level is there are a number of universities that have this as a major, both undergrad and then graduate, going to get a master's degree. And so that would be the top level, I would say. The benefit of that is that you're really immersed in it for a lot longer time, a little bigger network of people potentially that you're kind of connecting with and employers. Some of them have work study type of programs, so you can work in the usability lab at Bentley, for example. I'd also encourage you to look at Jared Spool's school. Jared Spool is an amazing thought leader in the UX space, and he has a kind of a variety of levels of education and training as well. There's without getting into all the different schools, there's a number of them that have really good programs.
You did mention that you've done some teaching. What were you teaching? Were you teaching in a program at Bentley? Were you teaching one course? Did you teach multiple courses? What were the topics?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I got my master's degree from Bentley in UX, as I said, and after 10 or 12 or 14 years in the industry, I did get a call. Somebody was retiring, and the director said, I think you'd be a good fit to teach this class based on a variety of projects you've done as a consultant. I've been mostly a consultant on the agency side through my career. And the class I taught was about kind of managing user-centered design projects. And so, not to advertise for them, but in a lot of these schools, you'll take one class that's about the usability testing method, and you'll take another class that's about information architecture, and you'll take another class that's about kind of conceptual interface design. And then this class was about kind of the dynamics of working in a team on creative endeavors like this.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean when you're the UX person surrounded by developers who don't understand UX? What does it mean when you are a researcher and you're thrust into an agile environment?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you fit into that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring together a team and do collaborative sessions? And what's your role as as UX facilitator? And can you get some practice in that? So that was the class that I taught. Yeah.
Great. Well, this was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. It's been a good, like I said, good profession to be in the last 20 years, and it's been
Yeah.
fun. Thanks for letting me reflect on it a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Mike. Thanks so much.
No problem. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, have a good Saturday.
You
Good time
too.
with all three kids there.
Too many.
Busy.
All
And I
right.
look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, take care, Brandon.
Bye.
See ya.